listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
This is Pharmacy Crossroads with your host, community pharmacy business veteran, the road trip guy, Bruce Nealand. Community pharmacy is at a crossroads. Pharmacy owners across the country are evolving their pharmacy businesses and making a bigger impact on their communities. Bruce talks with the most innovative community pharmacy owners, pharmacy industry experts, and people who are passionate about the business of pharmacy and its impact on community healthcare. Pharmacy Crossroads is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. And now, here's our host, Bruce Nealand.
Well, hello again, everybody. This is Bruce Nealand bringing you another episode of Pharmacy Crossroads. Today, I have a longtime friend, Ken Tai, on the line with us, and he's there with his colleague, Robert Ojeda, and we're going to talk a little bit about GPOs and what these two great pharmacy owners are doing in building a GPO called K&B Pharmacy Associates. But more importantly, we want to find out who these guys are and what they know and how they think they can help other pharmacy owners. So Ken, you're the senior officer on the line today, so I'll have you go first. And then Robert, pick up after Ken pauses. And if he doesn't pause soon enough, cut him off and let's get going. But Ken, good morning and thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, first of all, Bruce, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk with you and see you at the various conferences and whatnot. Another podcast with you, so I'm excited. I'm a pharmacy owner, independent pharmacy owner. I've been doing this for, quite frankly, almost 20 years now. Love what I do. Was very fortunate to be able to continue to grow as an independent pharmacy owner and ultimately owned multiple locations and started up my own franchise. And now we have locations throughout Southern California as well as in Las Vegas, Nevada. In this time period, I guess the topic of the day, the GPO, is when I started to understand that, hey, we really need to get more leverage and work together. I then was able to partner up and kind of start our own GPO with our little group of pharmacies that we owned. And that's kind of how this all started, is just finding ways to leverage and to better position ourselves as independent pharmacists and owners and whatnot, to be able to, optimize not just pricing, but also working together collaboratively as owners to find best practices to serve our patients, as well as to find ways to survive and thrive in this very difficult current environment that we're subject to, with PBMs and et cetera. And that's kind of how we kind of got going. And so, of course, as we developed, more and more folks joined the party, and we're just excited to continue to work with other owners to find ways to allow us to continue to thrive in this current environment.
Well, thank you. And that's Robert, that's your cue to tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll dig into this.
And good morning, Bruce, and thank you again. It's a great honor to be part of your podcast. We've listened to you over the years. I've been in the business, in similar time frame as Ken had mentioned, and this has definitely evolved into the platform where it's at today. I will say that from my background and tenure, I've come in from the specialty pharma side to the wholesale side to eventually managing and partnering with buying groups and evolving those buying groups. And then what we realized was over this time period, not only was I managing that side of the business, but then also, almost 10 years ago now that partnered with Ken, and we started piloting programs of sort that evolved to where we're at today as me being a partner and managing partner of 986, our stores, as well as evolving what I call a necessary evil in our industry, and that is the GPO side or buying group side of the business. So definitely has evolved. And really, the main premise of K&B Pharmacy Associates is really to support and use it as a platform for pricing, negotiations, and then also as we evolved, more of peer-to-peer relation, not just as a business consultant, but more or less best practices of what we do in creating efficiencies in communicating now from one peer to another. And this is where the premise, I would say, where K&B has evolved to be of today.
Well, great. You guys both hinted at something that I think is important, and I may get a little too long here, but you've talked several times about how obviously buying and purchasing is a core function of the buying group, but as important, and indeed I'd argue more important, is the ability to work together to find best practices, to find new markets and to grow. I'm a little bit older than you two, but 30, 40 years ago, there was a famous business guy by the name of Lee Iacocca. He's the guy who claims credit for inventing the Mustang car and the minivan and that kind of stuff. But in reading his his biography about 30 years ago, he tells the story about how you can't save your way to success. And he was a senior guy with Ford, and there was a downturn, and the big board meeting was held, and the bean counters were talking about, hey, we need to stop production at 2 or 3 plants. And he said, why? And they said, well, so we can save some money. And he says, let's shut them all down. How much money could we save then? And the point was, is he wanted to grow the business, not just save money. So that's part of where we are with pharmacy today. We know the PBMs are choking us on the dispensing side, but fortunately there's ways to go and places to go, and you and the guys at K&B Pharmacy Associates are doing some of that. So back to the script a little bit. Ken, can you tell us how you and Robert met and what the dream was when you hired him to run K&B?
Honestly, it was more just about, colleagues looking for opportunity. I've known Rob for a long time. He was literally my first drug rep back in the days when I first opened the store. And we've remained close friends because I always felt that, he had that grit and drive about him. And, when there's opportunities for us to kind of collaborate and find ways to expand the business, that's when we started to really work together, as partners. That was about 10 years ago. And just one thing led to another. It was almost like, two peas in a pod, right? We started to brainstorm. It was initially just small opportunities to, develop relationships with pharma. And then it expanded to saying, well, hey, your buying group, maybe we could expand this to other stores and find other folks of like mind that we can work together with. And it was so true because everyone's struggling out there. And when you're able to find a colleague that has maybe done similar things or maybe was able to explore certain areas that you're not familiar with, and now that can maybe incorporate into your operations and business to expand, then it becomes eye-opening and it becomes exciting. And so that's when I kind of leaned on Rob a little bit. I'm saying, hey, you come with all this experience on the buying group side and on the wholesale side. I'm sure we could do something special if we work together, and we brought him on board. I'm very grateful that he decided to take me up on that, and here we are, 10 years later. It's amazing still. Sometimes, Rob, when we talk and think about how we started, and it was just merely a discussion of sorts that expanded to ownership and multiple pharmacies, to you taking over as the president of our buying group, to where it is right now, where I don't even know the numbers exactly, but it in a matter of a few years we're almost breaching $500 billion in sales as a buying group, which is amazing. Think, from the context of, we're not one of those crazy buying groups out there that just want to recruit members. We're really very seriously looking at the right partners that maybe have a need, or quite frankly are in a point where they need to make some tough decisions. And a partnership like us will hopefully get them out, hopefully in the right direction, or put them in an expansion mode where they can now take what they have and take it to another level. So I'll leave it there. But yeah, I mean, Rob, please fill in here in the gaps, because I'm sure I missed a lot.
Well, and there's a lot to come. So Rob, cut to the chase. What is K&B? Who are you guys? What's different?
Well, with K&B, really, it's with that mindset, what Ken had mentioned. It's really looking at a model of practice what we preach. And I say that from the standpoint as we integrate new opportunities or avenues of even workflow or operational side, before this is even rolled out on a mass level of sorts, we're testing these opportunities out at our own stores. In fact, my own store or my own locations that we own together, we are literally putting our hands in the fire in testing things out before anything moves forward to other stores of sort. And I say that with passion, because there is no way that I would launch an opportunity of sort without testing it ourselves. I mean, it could sound good in theory, on paper, and whatnot, but when it actually comes to the operational side, on the day in, day out of pharmacy operation, it may be a different story. So we go back with that premise of practice what you preach. And that's exactly what we're doing. In fact, I'm on my way to the office in a little bit here to finalize another agreement with another vendor that is going to draw in additional revenue. And the first thing we're doing is piloting out a program. And we're going to test it. And over the next, I would say, 90 days here, we're going to look at the outcomes from that pilot and see where it goes. And then at that point, then we'll make a definitive decision on the approach to the opportunity and what that means, not only for our own stores, but for our colleagues and stores that now participate. But these are revenue streams that go above and beyond just looking at what you had mentioned earlier, Bruce, of just cost of goods. This is not a game anymore of just cost of goods. You have to find other ways and other means of revenue streams to ensure the longevity and being prosperous in our industry as a whole. If we just look at cost of goods alone, I'm sorry, it's too volatile in the market where we could say that today we're profitable and tomorrow we're not. So these are reasons why we have this approach. These are reasons why we are constantly looking at other vendors and opportunities to ensure our livelihood and to be prosperous, not only at an individual store, but now for our colleagues under the K&B umbrella.
Well, and Ken, you wanted to jump in there? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to jump in there real quickly. And I think just, again, like Rob said, I mean, I think the true differentiator is the fact that we ourselves are a pharmacy. We're boots on the ground, right? We're independent owners. They're out there trying to make this all work. And so we think like independent owners. So this buying group was never created for the sake of, wow, let's make a lot of money off a buying group. It was created so that we can help our stores to succeed and do better. So under that premise is very different than I think a lot of the other buying groups that I've, honestly been associated with or have worked with. It's almost, from the standpoint of, hey, this buying group is a business. We got to make money here. We got to find ways to, get as much as we can, whether it's through admin fees or through whatever programs they have. But our mindset's so different. It's about making sure that the independents do well, survive. Most of the funds that we make are always put right back into the stores, because that's where our business is at. Quite frankly, we are independent owners, and we're trying to find every which way possible to ensure that independent owners are passed along, all the programs, benefits, the different revenue streams, obviously the cost of goods. That's sort of, I think, the biggest differentiator. And when we talk to other owners out there, they're like, wait a minute, you talk like an owner, you talk like me. I was like, because we are. And so it's kind of different, kind of refreshing. We sit down and brainstorm, strategize, which is something that I don't think most buying groups do with their stores, but that's something that we do. So,
Yeah. So, Rob, back to you. You mentioned the fact that you have agreements with vendors that you test first. I don't want to get any brand names, but can you give us some examples of some of the programs beyond dispensing that you incorporate into your own pharmacies and then share with others?
Well, without diving too much into the weeds with the vendors, I will say that I'm always looking at the integration of opportunity with the least path of resistance. And I say that in a sense that if you start integrating opportunities of any sort into a workflow process, you have to reassess your workflow. And that is a crux of a lot of independent owners where there may be an opportunity, but then once you start integrating, I'll call it maybe a disruptor, you start integrating an additional step in their processes, that needs to be assessed. And we look at that very carefully in that sense, because I'm not looking to make major disruptions in the workflow process. I'm looking to look at efficiencies. And I'll give an example. And I would fare that if you're doing over 250 or greater prescriptions per day, you might want to look at the automation side of it. And what does that mean for the store level? What does that mean for responsibilities of your techs, your clerks, delivery, and so forth? We take that very seriously because it creates these efficiencies in place. So we've done a lot of studies at our own stores, again, and looked at these workflow processes. We've also looked at what is coming in marketplace for newer technology when it comes to even the vials. Again, I don't want to dive in too much of the details, but we are doing that now as creating these efficiencies to ensure quality assurance, patient compliance, and ultimately more streamlined of these efficiencies at the pharmacy level. And I know I briefly touched on like the vendor side of it, but I will say that it's an ongoing process. I call it the sharpening of the saw, where your saw is never going to be as sharp as you want to be in this kind of environment that we're in. We're constantly evolving. Never, I would say that we're not ones to be complacent in that sense, just to sit back and rest on our laurels and not really move forward to that next step. And I'm really grateful to say that, like-minded individuals and aggressive individuals that are looking at what those next steps are. I'm very grateful to say that I'm partners with Ken and the folks that we have in our infrastructure. We even have a strategic team that allows us to bounce ideas back and forth for the core of our business, and that evolves and spills into K&B, where this is all now coming to fruition, not only from assessing vendors of sort to testing out product, services, and operational level, and then integrating it out to our colleagues. So I say that, and I know I didn't dive in too much of the vendor side of it. Some of those are confidential, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate where we're at today because of that. It's really goes back to what I had said of practice what we preach, and that evolves around that core.
Ken, you and Rob have both talked about how you're owners. Tell me a little bit about how that translates into a major difference between K and B and other groups. And I think we need to address the fact that you're not a cooperative, and most of the other groups take great pride in talking about their cooperative. Can you address just a little bit about the foundation of your group, the stores you own, and then how that helps the members, even though you're not a cooperative?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a member of cooperatives and different, types of buying groups and whatnot. And to be frank with you, I think ultimately it doesn't, I don't know if it matters if you're cooperative or not. I think ultimately you have to look at, quite frankly, the culture of the actual buying group itself, and I think that from my vantage point, I'll be frank. I mean, when I see some of these groups and buying groups, they have a pretty heavy duty infrastructure, right? They have, multiple layers within the company, and they obviously have a pretty sizable budget to, keep that buying group functioning and doing what it does. And to me, I'm just thinking out loud. I'm like, wait a minute, that must come from somewhere, right? Right? That buying group must be making a good amount of money to support that type of infrastructure with that type of staffing, with that type of an organization. And so, from my vantage point, then I started thinking, well, where does that money come from? Right. The only function of a buying group is to sort of work with wholesalers and maybe leverage and get better contracting. So then I kind of understand a little better, then they must be generating a good amount of money, right? As another middleman. And so from my vantage point, when we looked at, K&B and when we formed that, almost, over, I guess, 15 years now, um, it was under the premise of, wait a minute, buying group is really supposed to help us. It's supposed to, find us the best contracts, find us the best ways to serve our patients and to provide programs to survive and thrive. So under that pretense, the buying group was formed with my stores only, to really serve as a pass-through. It really wasn't meant to make money. It was meant to be a sort of a brainstorm session of folks that came together to do what's best for each other's operations as owners, right? Always thinking from the lens of an owner of how we can do better, and the savings that you can generate from the buying group should, quite frankly, for the most part, pass right back through to the owners. And so that's how we started it, and that's how we've kept it. We have a very lean organization. We only, quite frankly, operate, with maybe 2 or 3, 4 staff members at most. But yet we do utilize the skills and the knowledge and experience of all of our members, right, to create that value so that there's shared best practices. And I think that probably is the thing that honestly differentiates us, right? Everyone brings a little bit something different to the table. If you're a 2-store owner, you could definitely learn from a 4 to 5 store owner. And if you're a 5 to 6 store owner, you can definitely learn from an 8 to 9 store owner. In our situations, our group is roughly about 40 to 50 locations. So we're able to help those that are in that, smaller stage. Maybe they're trying to grow up to the 20, 30 point. And what are some of the struggles they're dealing with? Right. And similarly, within our group, there's others that have even larger numbers, and I'm learning from them. Hey, how do you do this? Right? How do you manage that when you get to that level? It's a big struggle. There's a reason why NCPA Digest only quotes about 1.75 pharmacies or 2 pharmacies per person in the U.S. is because once you get past the 1 and 2, it's hard to split yourself 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways. So how do you create management, hierarchies to allow for that to happen to create efficiencies? So sorry, very long-winded response, but I do feel that at the end of the day, the buying group should serve the stores and the owners, which are essentially us as owners. It shouldn't be self-serving where they're getting themselves, quite honestly, very well-to-do and very profitable and are able to, quite frankly, create almost their own entities, right? And at the end of the day, because they're making so much money, I think that should not be the goal of a buying group.
So Robert, with that is going to kind of start winding down here, but K&B has been pretty much focused on Southern California or the Southwest, and the low overhead and tight infrastructure has been part of its success. What is the opportunity for somebody else to become a member of your group? What are you looking for? And is it possible for somebody outside of the tight Southern California marketplace to join K&B?
And thank you for that question, Bruce. And I will say, with our experience of what we have here in Southern California, and just Southern California alone, it's its own I feel like it's its own little country because of the saturation of patient population and what we've created with our platform. But I will say, because our structure now, when we first started to really support our own members meaning our own stores, that has evolved. And I'm not going to isolate ourselves when there are so many colleagues and owners that have questions, they're in need, they need to understand these processes that Ken had just mentioned, from expanding out from an individual store to a second location, or a store owner that has several and wants to expand it even further, or even Ken recently assisted in aiding a pharmacy owner in launching out their LTC program. So these are areas, whether you're in Southern California or whether you're in Florida or in, throw a dart on the US map, our contract is purposely written open-ended for peers to participate. And I'm not going to isolate ourselves or this contract only to our stores. This is now a fair market where we're able, whether no matter where you're at across the country, you can benefit from this. And because the guidelines set forth from the Board of Pharmacy, the guidelines set forth in California are so stringent, we pretty much set the bar very high when it comes to the levels of compliance and quality assurance at our own stores. So interpretation of that might be a little bit more loosely written in other states where the bar is here or at a much higher level. So when we come in for advice, when we come in to assess an opportunity, we've already have these protocols and standards in place. So to answer your question, I would be grateful to see where the opportunities lie for those in need, for those expanding, for those wanting more information about what we do. And I'll even take it a step further. I would even encourage any folks listening, even if you're in Southern California, to please come and visit with us. Please come and say hello. And I'll even take you on a quick little tour, as long as it's planned ahead, to a few of our locations. And you could even see for yourself what we are doing at our own stores we own and operate, as well as our operations over at K&B. And it's truly for the passion and for the drive of our own stores. But like we had mentioned earlier, it is a necessary evil that we have a GPO to ensure the necessary support from cost of goods, and using this as leveraging even with our vendors and strategic vendors of sort.
How does somebody reach you, Robert? What's your email address and what's the website?
Yes, if you don't mind, I could provide that information to you. Also, my email address is robert.o@kb-rx.com.
So that would make the website www.kb-rx.com.
That is correct.
I'll get both of those in the show notes, but it's those things typically don't show up very prominently. So
Okay.
One more time, Robert.o at kb-rx.com. So Ken, you get the last word, almost the last word. I'll wrap up, but what's your takeaway on what you think really makes your group attractive to others? And are you equipped to take people on in Washington and Kentucky and other states? Can you really do that?
Actually, well, I think start with the first question, what makes us attractive? I'll be frank with you, I think when anyone's making a decision about their buying group, I think it's really, obviously people look at the contracts and that's always a part of the discussion, but I think more important than anything else is really looking at, who you're working with. I think that we deal with, we have, pretty long standing discussions to see what are their goals and, what is the thought process of how to get there, right? Are they looking just for a contract, or are they really looking for, someone who is a sounding board that they can work with to really find ways if they're struggling to improve on that and to do better, and if they're doing good, how do you do better, right? I think that has been, at least from my vantage point, why I felt that we've been I guess from our current members, why we've been a good buying group for them is to have that camaraderie and to have that sense of ownership where you're like part of this bigger team that will allow you to, see and do things that maybe you were not able to previously. Do we have the capability and actually we are already serving some of the states you just recently mentioned, where you have partners in those states. I do feel that we're not a buying group for everyone, to be very frank with you. I feel that, different groups have different goals. For us, it's really being a partner. So if that's more of what you're looking for, then I do feel that, K&B would be a good option. I do think that, we're, like I said, an owners group. So if you want to have that type of a partnership, then I think that we make probably a good choice. But I do feel there's other folks out there that might have a different model. I do think we're unique. I just don't see our model very often because, some buying groups, they might be big, but they also make you feel very small. I think that's maybe the best way to put it. From our vantage point, we want to make you feel part of the buying group and a part of our growth and expansion. And so, yeah, are we good for everyone? I'm not sure we can say that, but have we been a good partner with all the folks that have joined us up to this point? I think for the most part, Rob, I think the answer is yes. I think most of us in our communication with them, and like Rob just mentioned, we're able to actually sit down and say, hey, you want a 340B opportunity? This is how we do it. You want long-term care? This is how we do it. And if you want to go into specific areas, especially, this is how we do it. Those are not typical, I think, answers that you can get from any other buying group, as a partner. So.
Well said. So I'll wrap up here with just a couple thoughts. Number one is that thank you for sponsoring this podcast. I'm delighted to chat with you, and I've done a couple projects with you over the last few months, which led to this. As an honest broker in the industry, I've got friends and relationships with leaders at many of the other pharmacy buying groups, and I heard one time from an interview I did with one of the buying group owners where he said, in essence, the same thing you just said, is that the key attribute is the culture of the company. You want to join a group where you feel like you can belong and where you can contribute and where other people will help you, help you succeed in different ways. And, I from your members who I've had a chance to meet over the last few months, I certainly know that they appreciate that intimate hands-on care. And that strikes me as clearly one of the differences between your group and some of the others. The other point that I will use to kind of throw in my tagline and do the branding exit here, my tagline for my show is help pharmacists do more and be better. And one of the things that is challenging, and Robert intimated this when he's examining new things that you can bring, you finding things that will make you money are not all that hard. Finding things that you can actually do that will make you money is quite hard. And I love the notion as to how when you're recommending something to somebody, it's not because that company bought an ad to advertise in your newsletter or because they paid to exhibit at a trade show. It's because somebody's working with that vendor and finds that it can actually be used in a pharmacy. And that's a notable difference between K&B and some of the other groups as well. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors, This is Bruce Nealand bringing to close another episode of Pharmacy Crossroads. Our guests today have been Ken Tai, CEO of the 986 Pharmacy Group, and Robert Ojeda, who owns a few pharmacies and then is also the president of K&B Pharmacy Associates. This is all for today. Thank you for joining. And this is Bruce Nealand, hoping that something we've said here will help you do more and be better. Good day.
Thanks for listening to Pharmacy Crossroads. If you're interested in talking with Bruce, please contact the show. Visit pharmacycrossroads.com. We look forward to hearing from you.